Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar.
Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome to another podcast from your Tax-Free Life podcast. This is episode 117 of your Tax-Free Life podcast. As you know, I'm very excited to be here always with each and every one of you every week. The title for this podcast today is Real Money is Made or Lost in the Details. And that's something very important because whenever we do a tactical retirement blueprint, and thanks to many of you that reached out last week after I did a podcast on what the tactical retirement blueprint is and what it can do to you and your family. So I had a number of calls and emails, so I appreciate your feedback and reaching out as well. But in doing a lot of the audits that we do on an ongoing basis, one of the things that we find most of the time is that, the real money is actually made or lost in the details. And one of the biggest challenges that Americans have is their inability to take a look at the details. It could be because they don't have the financial know-how or the knowledge to be able to peel the onion in a way that they're going to be able to identify all of the booby traps in their finances. Many other times they just don't care, they don't think about it, and they pretty much go on through life along those lines. So what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about understanding the details and the importance of the details if you happen to be a business owner, and then when it comes to the business of retirement and finances. So I'm going to talk a little bit about being a business owner, because I am one, and I've been one for many, many years. But by the same token, if you happen to be a business owner yourself, or you're thinking about opening a business, regardless of what type of business you're going to open, there are some things that you need to be able to pay attention to if you want to be successful in your business life. Now, one of my very good friends, Ricardo Lorenzo, was telling me the other day that, you know what, Bert? He says, men get too old too soon and wise too late. He said, men get old too soon and wise too late. And I thought that was a tremendous statement that he made, because, even in my own personal life, I got old too soon and wise too late. So, and I would imagine that this applies to many of you. So the sooner that we can get wise in our lives, not only in our personal lives, but also in our business and retirement lives, the better off we're going to be moving into the future. Now, if you happen to be a business owner, and again, once again, it doesn't matter what type of product you're selling, product cost is paramount. In other words, you have to be able to account for everything, including leakage. I have a very good client of mine that owns a deli here in South Florida, and he owned another one in New York City that he just sold a few years ago. But the one that he has here in South Florida is doing very well, and has been doing very well for the last 15 to 20 years. And he pays attention to everything. He pays attention to inventory. He pays attention to the leakage. Food goes bad. You lose a power outage, and you got to be able to account for every single penny and dollar when it comes to understanding where the leakage is coming from, and how to plug it, and how to put it into the pricing of the products that you sell every single day. Now, inventory control is going to lead to higher profit margins. And once again, it doesn't matter what kind of business you have and what kind of product you sell. You need to have proper inventory control, because if you don't, then there's going to be a lot of losses coming through inventory, and many of them are internal losses through theft or whatever it may be. So you need to have a computer system that will allow you to maintain inventory control, because at the end of the day, it's going to be very good and very profitable for your business. Now, if you own a business, any type of business, once again, you have to be able to break down the cost of doing business to dollars and cents. You'll be surprised, whenever I do an audit, one of the things that we do in my practice on the tax planning side of the house, we provide CFO services. So I have a number of clients that are doing well, but they're not big enough to be able to hire a CFO, so they hire me on a monthly basis to come in and take a look at their P&L statements or balance sheets, their statements of cash flow, take a look at their inventory control, and all of the things that are going to make their business profitability at some point in time in the future. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to look at the cost of everything. Obviously, if you're able to do a good job at valuing the cost of everything, whether it is, how long does it take, how much does it cost to make a sandwich? What kind of sandwich are you going to make? How many ounces of ham you're going to use or cheese you're going to use? What is the cost of bread? Is it better to have the bread be brought in wholesaled, or is it better for you to be able to bake it in-house? All of those things play a major role in determining whether you're going to be successful or not in your business. This client actually bought an oven just to bake his own bread. And by doing that, he was saving close to 17 cents in every loaf of bread. Now, you may say, well, 17 cents is not a lot. But when you multiply times thousands and thousands of loaf of breads that he uses on an annual basis, then it actually amounts to thousands of dollars. Now, if you look at franchises, for the most part, franchises are fairly profitable. Now, some are more profitable than others, but if you take a look at franchises like McDonald's, Burger King, some of the other franchises, In-N-Out, which is a privately owned franchise out in California, and they're now in Texas, but primarily out on the West Coast. But there are many franchises in the United States. Robex is another one. I have a good client of mine that owns 3 Robex franchises. They pay attention to everything. They have to pay attention to the square footage. What is going to be the profitability per square foot of store that you have, or that either you own the property or you lease it. And many of them have computer systems that allow for them to understand cost to the bare minimum, and also how to do marketing details and profitability. One of the major franchises was Mrs. Fields Cookies. And interesting enough, they had a computer system that whenever you purchased cookies from their company, and there were primarily major commercial malls throughout the United States, the computer system will keep track of the type of cookies that were sold, how many cookies were sold per minute, per hour, what were the best days of the week, and even when you were getting ready to open the store in the morning, how much cookies did you have to have baked, from which flavors, and how much dough do you have to have thawing at some point in time in order to mitigate rush hour traffic. And they could tell you down to the minute, what were the times that you would have to be able to come in and purchase a cookie, and the fact that the cookie had to be readily available for you as a client when you came in to purchase it. So, some of these computer systems are able to monitor inventory and everything, and obviously you got to factor that in if you want to be a successful business owner. I've never met a successful business owner that did not pay attention to details. Now, I can continue to talk about business owners because I provide CFO services and I do business tax returns for my business clients all the time. But, that should give you a little bit of detail and should give you a little bit of feedback as to what's important to understand as a business owner. Now, I want to shift gears at this point in time and talk a little bit about the business of retirement and finances. And one of the things that I always say to my clients is you can never hit a target that you can't see. So if you can't see the target, then there's no way you're going to be able to hit it. And that's important to understand. And whether it's a business target or a personal target, it's very important and apropos that you keep an eye on it, because otherwise you're going to miss it altogether. And obviously I call this a business or retirement because, yes, retirement is a business, and you have to be able to treat it accordingly. If you don't treat it as a business, chances are you're not going to be very successful at it. So in reality, if retirement is a business, then you, the retiree, or someone who's about to retire in the very near future, you're the CEO, you are the CFO, and you are the employee of your retirement plan. So you have to make certain that you keep that in mind, because otherwise you're going to miss that target altogether. Now, I do normally, when I do my tactical retirement blueprint for clients, I ask a lot of questions, because my job is to listen and to be able to adjust, adapt, and improvise all the decision-making processes that my clients are doing on an annual basis in order to help them get from point A to point B. Now, because of the fact that I have over 70 clients that are already retired, and they actually retired with me, I basically have to retire with each and every one of them, because I have to be able, as I've said many a times, I have to be able to hold them by the hand and make certain that I can take them to that promised land, which is a successful retirement life. So some of the questions that I ask when I visit with them, and I'm going to be asking many of you today in this podcast, is number one, how do you measure retirement account losses in your portfolio? Do you measure it as a cost, or do you measure it as financial leakage? And how do you determine which one is which? Because when you look at retirement account losses, especially when you have your money invested in the stock market, see, retirement account losses are going to happen at any point in time. And very seldom do they happen at an opportune time. Usually they happen at the worst possible time in your life. So you, as the CEO and the CFO of your company, you have to be able to measure the impact of losses in your retirement accounts and try to do the very best you can in order to avoid those losses, because otherwise you're not being a very, very good CEO to your retirement business. Another question that I ask many of the clients is, well, how do you measure retirement account taxation in your portfolio? Is it a cost, or is it a financial leakage? And you'll be surprised. Many of the clients that I ask this question, they say, well, Bert, we have to pay taxes no matter what. So for me, that becomes a cost, which in turn actually should be not a cost. It should be a financial leakage, because you can always plug that cost if you know how to do it, and you do it conceptually, and you do it economically, and you do it the right way. Another question that I normally ask is, how do you measure the financial value of guarantees in your retirement portfolio? Again, is it a cost, or is there a leakage? Now, if you don't have any retirement guarantees in your portfolio, then that's the number one problem that you're going to have to deal with, because you have to be able to take longevity off the table. And one of the major challenges that all of you and all of us are going to have to deal with in the next 20 to 30 years is the fact that we're going to live a long, long life. And if you have longevity on your side of the ledger, how are you going to be able to mitigate, 20, 30 years in retirement? How are you going to be able to take all that cost and all that leakage and make it worth your while? You're not that good. No one is that good. So you have to be able to find tools that are going to help you provide guarantees in your retirement portfolio in order for you to minimize the cost and the leakage that you would have otherwise. Another question that I normally ask is, how do you measure the financial impact of your retirement income on the rest of your assets? And is it a cost, or is there a leakage? When you start taking distribution out of your retirement accounts, that income that you're going to be generating on an annual basis is going to have a negative impact on everything else that you're doing in your retirement portfolio. The challenge is that because most Americans are making financial decisions in a vacuum, they don't have the ability and they don't have the wherewithal to comprehend the financial impact of that leakage on everything else that they're doing from a business and retirement standpoint. So, for instance, will your Social Security income be impacted at retirement? Will your Medicare premium be impacted at retirement? And any time that you take retirement distribution out of qualified assets, meaning assets where the money went in pre-tax, it grew tax deferred, but now you have to pay taxes on distribution. Anytime you have to take a distribution out of those assets, then you're either going to have a benefit or you're going to have a failure in the rest of your retirement assets, and Social Security may actually come and be taxed at a much higher level where you thought you would have never had to pay taxes on your Social Security benefits. And that's because you took way too much money out of your retirement accounts. So those are things that you got to pay attention to. For many of my clients, if they don't understand, how to mitigate the issues of taxation and retirement, their Medicare premiums are going to double. And that's a big issue, because at the end of the day, if you have to pay taxes on all your retirement accounts, and now you also have to pay taxes on a portion of your Social Security benefits, and on top of that, now your Medicare premium is going to double, then what is that going to leave to you and your family as far as net income in order to maintain your standard of living? So if you don't do your due diligence, and if you're not a good steward or CFO or CEO to your retirement business, because it is a business, then, how can anyone else do it for you? You have to be able to pay attention to those things. And these are conversations that you should be having with your financial advisors. And if you're not having these conversations, or if your financial advisors are not bringing these issues to the table as you're getting closer and closer to retirement, then you got to wonder what kind of financial advisor you have. Because I would argue that you probably don't have one. So there's still time for you to be able to do something along those lines. Another question that I would ask you here is, will you run out of money before you run out of life? And if so, was it a cost, leakage, or financial stupidity? Yes, many of us make stupid mistakes. I make stupid mistakes from time to time. But if you run out of money before you run out of life, you made a stupidity mistake, and you're going to be paying the price until the day you die. Now, there are many ways in which you can create guaranteed paychecks in retirement, as I have talked to you in the past. But many of you, now some of you already have, because you've been reaching out to me, and now we're working through some of those issues and concerns. But some of you, it goes in one ear and out the other. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in retirement, and you got to worry every year where your next mortgage payment is going to come from, because many of you are still going to have a mortgage in retirement because you haven't been able to do your due diligence in order to liquidate those liabilities prior to reaching your retirement age. Another question is, have you taken longevity off the table? And I talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. If you don't take longevity off the table, then chances are you're not going to have a very successful retirement life. Because, there are basically, 5 reasons, why you need to have a guaranteed paycheck in retirement. Number one is longevity. That's number one in the tolling poll. Number 2 is the withdrawal rate. How much money do you take out of your assets on a given year? If you take too much, then you're going to run out of money before you run out of life. So longevity is going to kill you. If you take too little, then you're really not enjoying your retirement life. The next one is going to be the sequencing of returns. It's not only taking too much or too little, but now you have to worry about, am I taking it at the right time? Because if the stock market is heading south and your account values are heading south, then do you take it now? Do you wait for the market to recover? And if you want to wait for the market to recover, how are you going to make ends meet, and how are you going to be able to maintain your standard of living along those lines? See, having a guaranteed paycheck in retirement kind of helps you avoid all of those issues. So longevity, withdrawal rate risk, sequencing or return risk, inflation risk is another one. And then last but not least would be deflation and tax risks. So all of these risks that are so critically important if you want to enjoy a successful retirement life are readily available for you to fix. But very few of you are going to take the next step, which is you have to be able to start working on it. You know, the road to 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And how many of you have taken that first step, either by yourselves or with your financial advisors? So taking longevity off the table is going to give you the peace of mind that the vast majority of Americans don't have today. Because very few Americans, I would argue less than 1% of Americans, have guaranteed paychecks in retirement. Now, I'm not talking about Social Security because that's a guaranteed paycheck, but I'm talking about primarily guaranteed pensions and or public or private pensions along those lines. But if you do it the right way, and if you create a proper annuity portfolio, you're going to have the ability to create a guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life that neither you nor your family would ever be able to outlive. How much better would your retirement life be? Well, how much better would your peace of mind will bring to you when it comes to understanding that if you already know when the next paycheck is going to hit and the amount that it's going to hit by, then obviously you're going to have more leverage with the rest of your retirement assets. And what I want to do for all of you is I want to provide you with the tools to make certain that you're making the right decisions at the right time for the right reasons and under the right circumstances. So that's important to understand. Now, another question that I would ask people that come to see me for the first time as I do their tactical retirement blueprint is, have you measured the impact of disability on your life, your family's life, and your retirement assets? And by the way, if you're not paying attention to this one, shame on you, because 70% of you are going to have a very high risk of probability, and you will actually encounter a risk of disability and a probability of disability in retirement. So if you're not planning for that, what are you doing? Because if you don't have proper planning, then you're going to have to go into your retirement assets and pay and pull more money in order to offset the additional cost of healthcare, and that's going to accelerate the depletion of all of your assets and the fact that you will definitely run out of money before you run out of life. And that's going to be a major problem. And then you're going to be pretty much disinheriting your family along those lines. Have you measured the impact of a premature death on your family and your retirement assets? What if you don't wake up tomorrow morning? I always tell my clients that tomorrow is promised to no one, and that no one ever dies at the right time. Well, what if you don't die at the right time? What if you don't wake up tomorrow morning? Are your retirement assets sufficient after you take care of all that leakage that you're going to have through inflation, taxation, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, and so forth? Are you going to have enough retirement assets to keep your family in their current standard of living for the rest of their lives? And if the answer to that is no, or I don't know, then there's time for you to do something about it, and you still have time on your side of the ledger, so that's important to consider. Now, have you measured the impact of taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, and interest rate volatility on your retirement? And if so, was it a cost, leakage, or financial stupidity? And there I go into, the things that you could have done that you never did. I did a podcast a few weeks ago that I think the title to the podcast was Don't Ever Let What Could Have Been Become What It Never Was. Because many of us, and sadly enough, do that every single day. So was it financial stupidity that all of a sudden taxes are going to double in the next few years, and you didn't do anything in order to avoid that? And all of a sudden now you have a lot less money available to you in retirement, and now your retirement plan or your 401k became a 201k because of the tax and erosion and stock market volatility leakage. How are you going to deal with that? How's your family going to deal with that? Another question that I would ask, and that I do ask in all my tactical retirement blueprints, is how are your taxable buckets allocated? Are they allocated in your favor or the IRS's favor? Let me repeat the question again, because this is a critical one. How are your taxable buckets allocated? Are they allocated in your favor or the IRS's favor? I can tell you this much. I think it was so far for the year, even with the COVID-19 and the pandemic that we've had, I've done close to 40 tactical retirement blueprints. In all my tactical retirement blueprints that I have done for clients in 2020, all but one, the allocation was in the favor of the IRS and not in the favor of the client and or his family. So you have to understand the taxable buckets. You know that the IRS is going to charge you taxes in one of three ways: in either the taxable bucket, the tax deferred bucket, or the tax-free bucket. In the taxable bucket, you're paying the taxes up front. You pay taxes every year on the growth of that bucket. And then when you pull it out, you may have to pay capital gains taxes or dividend distribution taxes, when you sell the assets that you have inside that taxable bucket. So from a taxable standpoint, it's not a very good bucket to have, because you're going to be taxed at the beginning, during, and at the end. But it provides a lot of liquidity, so you have to have money in your taxable bucket. But there has to be an optimum amount of money. I'm not talking about having a lot of money, but it has to be the optimum amount. How about the next bucket? That would be your tax deferred bucket. That's where the vast majority of clients that I engage for the first time, that's where they have all of their financial leakage. And this is why I say that the vast majority of their assets are either located in the tax deferred bucket or the taxable bucket. And therefore, that allocation is in the favor of the IRS. It's not in your favor. Because the only way that it would be in your favor would be if the assets were in the next bucket, which would be the tax-free bucket. But when it comes to your tax-deferred bucket, you all know that the money that goes in pre-tax, the money grows tax-deferred, and then you got to pay taxes on the way out. So your 401ks, your 403bs, your pensions, your IRAs, all are impacted. And not only that, when you start taking distribution out of the taxable and the tax-deferred bucket, and guess what? Now your Social Security benefits are going to suffer. Now your Medicare premium is going to suffer, because now you have to be able to do provisional income calculations to determine what percentage of your Social Security benefits is going to be taxed in retirement. And if either 50% or 85% of your Social Security benefits are now going to go into the tax world, then now you're going to have to plug that hole and the leakage by taking more money out of retirement assets and pay more in taxes in order to offset the taxes that you pay on your Social Security benefits. So that's how, being in the front of a circular firing squad. Obviously, it doesn't matter where you shoot. You're going to hit someone, and many times they're going to hit you as well. Now, if you have the vast majority of your assets in your tax-free bucket, which is comprised of your Roth IRAs, your Roth 401ks, your 7702 plans, which are your cash value life insurance plans that many of my top clients are using, and or your municipal bonds, although municipal bonds have an asterisk, because although municipal bonds are received federal income tax-free, the income that you receive out of those municipal bonds need to be added to the provisional income calculation to determine what percentage of your Social Security benefits gets taxed in retirement. So unless you have the optimum balance between your taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free bucket, then how can you tell me you're being a good steward and a good CFO and a good CEO to your retirement business? And that's a major challenge that I get from with my clients, and that's the first thing that I do for them, is I want to make certain that we have the proper balance in their IRS bucket accounts. Because at the end of the day, I want to make certain that that allocation, it's in my client's favor and not in the IRS's favor. You also need to remember that Social Security maximization can extend your retirement assets 5 to 7 years. See, if you don't have to pay taxes on your Social Security benefits, and if you have Social Security protection in case of a premature death, then the retirement assets are going to last 5 to 7 years. And when you're in your mid to late 80s or your early 90s, 5 to 7 years is a very, very long time. And that's just by moving assets around and buying an additional 5 to 7 years in retirement without having to worry about running out of money before you run out of life. So one of the last questions that I want to ask you now is, so what's better, a hammer or a screwdriver? You know, I ask that out of every single client, and everyone says the same thing. Well, Bert, you know, it depends. I mean, if I have a nail, I'm going to use a hammer, but if I have a screw, I want to use a screwdriver. The problem is that most of my new clients don't know the financial difference between a financial hammer and a financial screwdriver. So, as the CEO or CFO of your retirement plan, are you the windshield or are you the bug? I mean, these are things that you need to be able to pay attention to. Because unless you start doing your due diligence today, not tomorrow, not the next day, not next week. I mean, we're in July of 2020, so half of the year is already gone. Now, I can't wait for 2020 to be over because it's been a horrendous year with the pandemic and the COVID-19 and the coronavirus. But at the end of the day, we're at the halfway point of 2020. And what have you done about your retirement assets? You know, some of you have lost a lot of money. Others have recovered some, but you're still down for the year. And who knows what's going to happen next year, because the pandemic is going to bring other issues and concerns that are going to be precipitated because of the fact that we've had this pandemic. So the real estate market is going to suffer. The stock market is going to suffer. Obviously, take a look at our national debt. Take a look at the unfunded liabilities. Take a look at the national deficit, which is now north of $3 trillion, meaning that the U.S. government is spending, $3 trillion more than they're bringing in. What do you think that's going to happen to your retirement assets? What do you think that is going to happen to the taxation of those retirement assets? And have you really done anything about that? Have you done anything about the CARES Act in 2020 and the benefits that you could have if you apply some of those techniques to your personal finances? So those are things that are very, very critical for all of you to think about, because I want you to become your CEO and the CFO of your retirement business. I want you to become very proactive. I want you to become focused. I want you to be able to talk to a retirement strategist and a tax planner like myself. Now, if you find someone else that you know, like, and trust and that can do the same things that I do, then obviously you can go for it. But you have to question who you're doing business with. You have to be able to question the value that your financial advisor is bringing to your table right now. Because if he's not bringing it to you and you're not bringing it to yourself, hope is not a financial strategy. Because one of the feedback I get from my clients, well, Bert, I'm hoping that by the time I retire, I'm going to be in a better position than I'm in today. Well, hope is not a financial strategy. So if you keep on hoping, guess what's going to happen? The definition of insanity, of doing the same things over and over again while expecting a different result. So if you want to pick my brains, and you want to reach out to me, and you want to try to have a conversation with me regarding what's keeping you awake at night from a financial standpoint, and you may want to engage me in putting together a tactical retirement blueprint, then please give me a call. You can feel free to call me at area code 786-766-1042, 786-766-1042. You can also send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com. That would be BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for you and your family is to kind of help you change the way that you see things. Because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thanks very much for giving me a little bit of your time today. Please stay healthy. Keep your social distancing. Wear your mask. And I'll talk to you once again next week. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.